Well, hello, everybody. I see some people are still joining us, and we want to get going now. And I just want to welcome you all to the National Ocean Sciences Bowl Finals competition, and to let you know how excited I am to be kicking off our 25th NOSB with all of you. My name is Alan Leonardi. I am the president and CEO of the Consortium for Ocean Leadership, and I'm really excited to be here in our 25th year. I also want to acknowledge right up front that this is the third year in a row that we're holding the event virtually. And believe me when I say it was a tough decision to have a virtual finals again this year, as we wanted nothing more than to celebrate your successes, as well as the 25th anniversary of the National Ocean Sciences Bowl in person. Yet, given the ongoing difficulties surrounding travel and COVID-19, including with the emerging variants, we ultimately decided holding the event virtually was necessary to ensure equity and inclusion for all of our regional winners. While it may be different than having in-person finals, I know you continue to make the most of the opportunity by participating in the planned activities, continuing to learn about ocean science and ocean-related careers, and interacting with your peers and others as much as possible. I thank you for your willingness to participate in this modified format and for your continued commitment to the National Ocean Sciences Bowl. In pulling this year's competition together, the 25th anniversary provided an opportunity to consider just how much the program has changed over the past 25 years. But before I get to what has changed, let me start by sharing what hasn't. What hasn't changed is the need for a robust ocean STEM workforce and ocean literate citizens. What hasn't changed is the dedication of all involved in the National Ocean Sciences Bowl to the program's student participants. Each year, the number of students and adults who have become more ocean literate through their NOSB participation has continued to increase, and so has the number of students wanting to pursue ocean and STEM related careers. And this is something that's worth celebrating. So what has changed in the National Ocean Sciences Bowl in these 25 years? Well, for one, we went paperless with EOSB, created by our own NOSB alum, Kane Jett. We added in the TCQs to get students more familiar with scientific data, plots, graphs, and to enhance critical thinking. We added the science expert briefing, enhancing students' understanding of the role of science in sound ocean policy. And of course, we went 100% virtual in 2021, no small feat given each region's unique needs and capabilities, and have continued to be successful in this modified format ever since. Another change to the program that came about just over 10 years ago was the addition of an annual competition theme, which was added to focus students' attention on more applied aspects of ocean science, and often to highlight an area of ocean science research important to that year's final host and or location. Our 2022 competition theme, Climate Change, Ocean Science and Solutions, highlights the importance for you, our future leaders, to understand the interconnected processes influencing Earth's climate at global and regional scales. It highlights that you understand the impacts of climate change, as well as the opportunities and approaches to adaptation, mitigation, and solutions. And it's an important and timely theme given the IPCC report released last summer, noting that while greenhouse gases from anthropogenic sources continue to drive extreme weather, that more than 200 scientists involved in writing the report believe that nations still can prevent the worst impacts. And on a personal side, I'd like to say I'm very excited about this topic because, after all, it was just a couple of decades ago when I was an undergraduate studying atmospheric sciences that I really became involved in understanding the role of the ocean in governing and regulating our climate system, and transitioned as a career pathway into the ocean sciences as a result. And I've never looked back. I've been very excited to be part of the ocean science community. Don't get me wrong. I love my weather and my atmospheric science friends as well, but the ocean really has been a calling for me along the way. And it all started with really thinking about climate change and the ocean's role in understanding climate change. Now, I know you have participated in a theme-based virtual field trip with NOAA earlier this week, learning how NOAA's Oxford Laboratory in Maryland and the surrounding town are adapting to sea level rise. You also had the chance to meet with many ocean and climate science experts during the career mentoring event. We are thrilled that over 40 individuals participated and supported your career explorations. We thank them for their time, and we're glad to hear they enjoyed speaking with you. Opportunities such as these are important aspects of the National Ocean Sciences Bowl, and I hope you both enjoyed them and learned a lot in the process. In addition to thanking our virtual field trip hosts and our ocean and climate science experts for their time, I want to especially thank our many sponsors for their support for ocean science education and career exploration. The past year has had many challenges for all of us, but our sponsors have been steadfast in their support of the National Ocean Sciences Bowl and your growth. Please join me in thanking the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, the Schmidt Ocean Institute, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, the Marine Mammal Commission, and the Gulf Research Program of the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, the American Honda Foundation, the Curtis and Edith Munson Foundation, the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, the Marine Technology Society, the IEEE Oceanic Engineering Society, the National Marine Educators Association as well. And last but not least, McGregor and Vineyard Wind, with Vineyard Wind becoming a new sponsor in 2022, supporting the theme's focus on solutions to climate change. Also, I want to thank our NOSB regional hosts and the many institutions that support our regional competitions. We have our greatest impact at the regional level due to their continued support and dedication to the program. NOSB doesn't happen without your support, so thank you. Now let's get on to the program. To help us kick off this year's NOSB finals, we have two highly influential speakers from our ocean community, both of whom can speak to this year's theme, but also about your important role as our ocean future leaders. First, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Rick Spinrad, Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere and the 11th NOAA Administrator. Rick's history with the National Ocean Sciences Bowl dates back farther than his time even with NOAA. In fact, Rick was instrumental to the creation of the National Ocean Sciences Bowl in 1998 and has remained involved in the program, including as a moderator at the regional and finals competition ever since. We appreciate NOAA's continued support for the National Ocean Sciences Bowl, and we are thrilled to have Rick here with us. Rick, do you want to take it away?
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, it really is a treat to be with you here tonight. As I'm sure you were able to discern from Alan's intro, part of my DNA is the National Ocean Sciences Bowl, having been involved from day one. I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. I think I can claim to be, if not the biggest fan, certainly one of the biggest fans of NOSB, and certainly well familiar with it, having played a variety of roles, from moderator to judge and everything in between. But it has been a really interesting development. And when we first designed NOSB, the thinking really was not to necessarily create more ocean scientists. I mean, that's a great byproduct, but really to build out an informed and knowledgeable public. My feeling early on was, if the alums of the NOSB end up being the doctors, lawyers, construction workers, the citizens of the world, and they know something more about the oceans, we will have succeeded. But think about NOSB and where we've come in 25 years. It really is a remarkable time. And for some of the younger folks on the call here, let me remind you that back when we started, first of all, the World Wide Web was this sort of novel, quirky little thing. Nobody really knew what it was going to be good for. Google actually didn't exist on day one of NOSB. It was shortly after that Google incorporated. Tesla was a 19th century inventor. What else? AUVs were 3 random letters. We didn't really know what AUVs were. And quite honestly, climate change was not a subject that got a lot of visibility outside the scientific circles. There were a lot of great scientists working in that arena, but it wasn't something that was felt to really bear on lives, livelihoods, quality of life of every American, every global citizen. So that's quite a ways that we've come in those 25 years. But there's other metrics. You can start looking at things like the numbers of NOSB alumni, 40,000 alumni of the program, pretty remarkable. And I would argue, regardless of how participants competed and where they ended up in the final rankings, these are 40,000 people that are much more savvy on ocean issues, much more knowledgeable about things like ocean-based solutions for climate change. So we're in a much, much better place. And although many of these alumni may not be working on the Hill or at NOAA, we can rest assured that knowing there's a public that's more knowledgeable about the ocean, we're in a much, much better place. That's a win, having those kinds of people involved. I wanted to, since it's a Friday night, I didn't want to get too heavy on you. I thought I'd share a couple of stories. Stories are always fun things to use. And I'm going to have a little bit of visual aids here. You're going to get some eye candy occasionally during my talk so you can get a sense of some of the stories. I want to tell you a story about the very beginning. And so many of you have, I hope, heard of Admiral Jim Watkins. Admiral Watkins was my boss. Admiral Watkins had the job that Alan Leonardi now has. And Admiral Watkins, an amazing guy, he'd been the top admiral in the Navy, Chief of Naval Operations, and he also served as Secretary of Energy. When he was the Secretary of Energy, he invented the National Science Bowl, and some of you may be very familiar with that. It was very much based on physics and chemistry and oriented toward the mission of the Department of Energy. And so when he came to be the inaugural president of what was then called the Consortium of Ocean Research and Education, he came into my office one day and he said to me, "Why don't we have a National Ocean Sciences Bowl? We have a National Sciences Bowl. Why don't we have a National Ocean Sciences Bowl?" And I said, "That sounds like a pretty good idea to me." And of course, as soon as I said that, I realized that's when he turned to me and said, "Okay, make it happen, Spinrad. But I'll help you out," he said. And of course, he was the retired highest ranking admiral in the Navy. So the next thing he did was he called the oceanographer of the Navy, a two-star admiral named Paul Tobin. And I was there in his office, in Admiral Watkins' office, when he called Admiral Tobin and he said, "Paul," he said, "you're about to have a great idea." And he shared with Admiral Tobin the great idea, because what we wanted was that a sponsor, in this case the Navy, would help kick it off. A federal agency sponsor, read somebody who can write checks to start this up. So Admiral Watkins walked in, said, "Let's create this thing." And then he called his buddies in the Navy and said, "You all have a really good idea. Now you need to make it happen." And then the next story is what actually did happen. So Sarah remembers this well. You'll get a chance to meet Sarah Schedinger if you haven't met her yet. She's on the call here. And Sarah and I worked together at Corps for Admiral Watkins. And we crafted the very first regional competition back in '98. And it was going to be, there were a couple of them happening that first weekend. And one was happening down in North Carolina. So the Admiral turned to me and he said, "Rick, go down to North Carolina because we don't know if this thing's going to work. We have no idea. It was all new." And I went down and I went into the classroom where one of the early rounds was going on. And I was standing in the back with the coaches of the two teams. And one team, quite honestly, was blowing the other team away completely and racking up the points. And I looked at the coach of the second team, the losing team, and he had a big grin on his face, ear to ear. And I walked over to him and I said, "You know, this isn't like golf. High scores win in this game." And he laughed and he looked at me. He said, "Yeah, I know." And I said, "Well, I got to ask. I mean, quite honestly, your team's got a lot of passion, but they're not doing all that well." He said, "Yep. And that's what I need to go back to my school board and convince them that we need more resources for environmental science programs, but specifically ocean science programs." I ran out in the hallway. We didn't have cell phones back then. I ran out in the hallway, got on the payphone and called Admiral Watkins. I said, "This is going to work." Because what I saw there was, it wasn't about who was winning. It was about what is the consequence of the National Ocean Sciences Bowl. And in this case, I had an object lesson where a teacher recognized that the value of the National Ocean Sciences Bowl was to help set the standard, help set the expectations for what curricula would be, what materials would be. And that was really when we knew this was going to take off. And you all know the rest of the story. It has absolutely exploded. My third story gets into some of the inside baseball, if you will, in the National Ocean Sciences Bowl. We realized early on that we had to have a good technical team to review the questions because we wanted to make sure that we got the answers absolutely right. So we crafted the very first technical advisory panel, and that was my job. And I called around to people I knew to sit on the panel. And we had a quite prestigious technical advisory panel in the first couple of years, still prestigious. But to give you some sense of the kinds of people, one of the folks on the early technical advisory panel was a fellow named John Canales. Now, John preceded me as a NOAA administrator, and he was also the dean of the Graduate School of Oceanography at University of Rhode Island. John is a real icon. He passed away a few years ago in the oceanographic community. Well, I'm telling you this story because there was an interesting discussion about one particular question, and it had to do with the Cromwell current. And there was a debate about what the right answer was for this question. And they went back and forth and back and forth. And John Canales was a very polite, very serious gentleman. And after about 10 minutes of this back and forth, he pounded on the desk and he said, I know what the answer is. The answer is B, and we can stop discussing this. And I know that because I discovered the Cromwell current, which was true. John Canales had discovered the Cromwell current. So we had a really, really interesting cadre of experts that were helping guide the program. And that's when I also knew that we had a good quality control for the questions that were going into the Science Bowl. The other thing that was so much fun in some of the early days was we decided that we'd try to bring in particularly interesting, influential folks who'd been in the field for some time, who could celebrate their success and tell some of the fascinating stories. So we had people like Clyde Roper back in 1998 in the very first NOSB final competition. We did it at Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C. At that point, Clyde Roper was the world's experts on giant squid. And remember, back in 98, nobody had ever seen a giant squid in the environment alive. Nobody had ever taken video images. And so Clyde came in with beaks and pieces and photos of washed up giant squid, and just was keeping people so engaged and so rapt. Who else have we had? We had George Marshall from National Geographic. He was the inventor of the Critter Cam and the Critter Cam Chronicles. He was at the Stony Brook finals in 2007. We had Sylvia Earle. Sylvia Earle, many of you know her. Sylvia is a pioneer, not just in the development of manned submersibles, but is one of the very first women to really get involved in deep oceanography. There you go. There's a picture of me doing my job, sitting in front of the moderator's mic, obviously having a good time. But it wasn't always just scientists that we had for these events. We also had Jim Toomey. Some of you may know Jim. He's the cartoonist who does Sherman's Lagoon. And that was 2012 in Baltimore, where he shared some of his views. There he is. Jim's turned out to be one of the strongest supporters of NOSB and has provided a lot of support for the program over the years. And then in 2019, just a few years ago, I guess the last time we did it live, we had Marsha Mcnutt. So Marsha Mcnutt has a fascinating background. She was the head of the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. She was the director of the U.S. Geological Survey, and Marsha right now is the president of the National Academy of Sciences. So what a treat, right? Think about those names, think about the experiences these people brought to bear. And it's not just that. As Alan indicated, field trips have been a mainstay of the NOSB for years, and the field trips have been really extraordinary. They've been to aquariums, research labs, research vessels. I remember in Charleston, I don't remember what year it was, we went out on one of the boats to a couple of the islands and were able to take some samples, talk to some of the local experts, learn about how to take care of animals, how to conduct research, how to provide forecasts, really some good, fun, hands-on opportunities, visiting marshes, going kayaking along the coast, doing beach cleanup exercises. All these things you're seeing in these photos here. And I'd be remiss if I didn't take just a minute and talk about some of the notable alumni. And we could be here not just all night, for days talking about them, but there's some folks I want to call out because you all tonight here are the ones we're going to be bragging on in years to come in a very similar vein. And in the spirit of how I started this talk, I want to share with you that these people have gone on to do a wide variety of very impressive things. You already heard from Alan about Kane Jett, who was a grad student at MIT who developed the EOSB software that has really, I think, upped the game incredibly for NOSB. Brian Kennedy said that participating in NOSB helped him understand what he wanted to do in his college career. He also discovered the NOAA Corps shortly after that. And after graduating college, he served as a junior officer aboard the NOAA ship Okeanos Explorer, the only federally owned dedicated vessel for ocean exploration. Heather Hinahan, while getting her PhD at Duke, she presented to the 2016 finals about her research in acoustic tools to understand dolphin sounds and human interference, and has been a very strong advocate for girls and women in STEM, and she's now a high school teacher. Nate Marshall from Boise, Idaho. That was the other thing I should say, that when Admiral Watkins and I first started down this path, we realized the coastal states would engage early on, but I remember saying to him, Admiral, I also think we will know we will have succeeded when we see teams coming from Idaho, Colorado, Kansas, and we're there. Nate Marshall said he'd never had chosen ocean science unless he participated in the NOSB. And he went on to develop his own research projects in paleoceanography and climate change, and ultimately was awarded third place Medal of Distinction in the 2016 Intel Science Talent Search. Pretty amazing. He's a PhD candidate at Scripps now in La Jolla. Lori Chong worked for Congressman Mike Honda of California as a fellow on the Hill working on technology policy programs. Alexander Clue is a member of the U.S. Coast Guard who helped the Coast Guard evacuate 11,000 Texas residents from Hurricane Harvey in 2017. Caitlin Ruby was a mapping intern on that same ship, the NOAA Okeanos Explorer. And there are literally thousands of other stories, but that should give you some sense of another metric of the success of the program. And we've also seen changes in how ocean science and ocean education are engaging in the last 20 to 25 years. And I'm delighted that one of the side benefits of NOSB is that I think a lot of school districts, a lot of curriculum developers are realizing that ocean science is a really good vehicle for teaching physics, chemistry, biology, any number of basic scientific, and not just scientific, mathematics, engineering, the arts, social sciences. So I think that's another fundamental change and real victory, if you will. Today at NOAA, we're doing a number of things that I would say feed off the understanding we're getting from programs like NOSB, including how to co-develop programs with a variety of communities. And let me just say a quick word about some of the things that I'm trying to do at NOAA so that you understand why I've got the passion for NOSB that I do. I really feel it's important that NOAA position ourselves to be the federal authoritative source for climate products and services. We don't have that in the federal government, and we need to do that. And that's why I'm particularly excited about the theme of this year's competition around climate change and ocean-based solutions. I also believe that we can build out new economic opportunities. You know, the interesting thing is, and some of those are tied to how we collect data. So sail drone, liquid robotics, open ROV, these companies didn't exist years ago, and now they are very serious economic enterprises. Think about the world of developing climate services for a variety of different applications. We can do that economic development while we are good stewards of the environment. And it goes without saying that we're trying to integrate equity into everything we do. And that doesn't just mean saying, here, we're gonna try to go to different neighborhoods and simply put products out there. It means co-development. It means fully engaging, fully integrating, fully dialoguing. And it's not just about socioeconomics. At NOAA, we have an interesting challenge. You know, we run the National Marine Fisheries Service. We put out marine forecasts. Some of you from the Northern Gulf Coast know that there's a very, very big Vietnamese fishing community in the Northern Gulf. Maybe they need to have our products translated into Vietnamese. That's an equity issue, an example of an equity issue that we need to attend to. So thank you for giving me a few minutes to talk about my excitement for NOSB, my excitement about being the NOAA administrator, my excitement about trying to see what the next generation of NOSB and NOSB alums will look like. The short answer there is you're going to help create it. So thank you so much for your time. Alan, I'll throw it back over to you, but I really appreciate having an opportunity on a Friday evening to share my passion and engage with you all. Thank you.
Rick, I really appreciate it, and love the walk back through history, and not just of alumni, but the leaders. I mean, it's clear that the 25 years of NOSB stood on the shoulders of giants, created the next generation of giants, and will continue to do so. Some of whom, many of whom, are in this room, in this virtual room with us today. And so it's exciting to see all those things happen. I hazard a guess that had the National Ocean Sciences Bowl been around when I was in high school, sadly it was before it began, I'm sure there would have been a team at my school, and we would have been participating in the Great Lakes Bowl, because I grew up in the state of Wisconsin. So, you know, yet again, one of the oceanographers that comes from a place in the middle of our country. So thank you for the inspiring words. I think we've got some time here for questions if anybody has them. Amanda and Melissa can moderate. There's a post in the chat that if anybody has a question, feel free to post it in the chat, and we'll get it to Rick. In the meantime, while we're waiting for that, I'll ask you, Rick. You've been involved with NOSB since its beginning. What is your most memorable memory of the competitions?
Yeah, so well, I hit on two of them. My most memorable memory was when we started it up, and I looking back, we had no idea what we were getting into. I think the magnitude of the program, when we first realized that we probably needed 10,000 questions in the inventory, that was a little overwhelming. The other real favorite memory I've got is, and I'll use that North Carolina Regional as an example, was I thought we'd have to sell and market the concept. We didn't. It sold itself. Sponsors, participants, the pressure to build out the regionals to the number that we're at right now, that was pretty surprising as well. So the enthusiasm for it, and I think now, looking back 25 years, the impact. I don't think, literally, a day goes by in my life as NOAA administrator where I don't run into somebody on the Hill, at another agency, in industry, who hasn't been touched by NOSB in one way or another. Many of them having been, many of the younger people having actually been participants in NOSB, and others knowing as much about it as I would say people might have known about the National Science Bowl 25 years ago. And I just, yeah, I'll have to say the other thing. It's a much different kind of thing. When people start showing up with face paint and you know, the costumes and the whole, you know, the whole thing about really getting into the competition, I wasn't ready for that. I didn't expect that, and I loved it. I just thought it was terrific, and bringing their favorite figures from, you know, Jim Toomey or from Star Wars or anything like that. That sort of enthusiasm was wonderful. And, you know, it's kind of funny as I'm talking, other things are on my mind. The other thing I've got to say is Admiral Watkins was a real mentor for me, and when the Watkins Sportsmanship Award was established, that for me is very memorable, because the man was an extraordinarily an individual of extraordinarily high integrity, and so sportsmanship was exactly the way to remember his contribution as well. Let me stop there. There's so many things I remember fondly about the program.
Well, fantastic, and given your experience and exposure to the program for all these years, I can only imagine there's no shortage of memories. I will say that there's a shortage of questions, but I'm sure that there's a whole bunch of people who are gearing up for what they have to do this weekend. So I think we're going to let you off the hook, and I'll move forward and introduce.
We do have one question that came in just now.
Oh, excellent.
What are 3 of the most impactful events and/or technological advances you've observed over the course of your career in ocean science and policy, and what made them so?
Yeah, one of my heroes, and he happens to be a good friend of mine, is Don Walsh. And I would like to hope that every one of the 62 participants on this call knows who Don Walsh is. So Don Walsh in 1960 was the Navy lieutenant who, along with Picard, went down in Trieste to the Marianas Trench. And that in itself is an extraordinary feat. But reading about how they did it with analog technology from 60 years ago, 60 years ago, really influenced me. I was a very young kid when that happened, and I remember just being blown away by that, but also being blown away by the fact that around the same time that that happened, that was earlier than the Apollo project, but not by much. I really thought, even as a young man, that after that dive, there would be an explosion of interest in deep ocean exploration. And of course, we ended up getting enthralled with the moon and the Apollo project. But for me personally, Don Walsh's dive in Trieste was one of those moments. Not so much a pivotal moment, but certainly a development, I would say, also was autonomous capabilities, autonomous vehicles, which didn't exist when I was a grad student. We didn't have anything along those lines. It was a pipe dream that you might actually be able to throw something off the side of a ship, let it go do its thing, and then have it come back in an hour, a day, a week, a month. And you look at what's happening now in autonomous underwater vehicles, autonomous surface vehicles, unmanned aerial vehicles. It's pretty extraordinary. And I think we've just started to scratch the surface. And I've got to say if you're only going to limit me to 3, I think the other one is also observational. It's the impact satellites have had on our capability to characterize synoptically what's happening in the ocean. And again, I remember the first time I heard about satellite-based imagery, basically TV cameras in space. Thought that was pretty cool. And then somebody said, we can measure the sea surface temperature this way. Thought, wow, that's really cool. Somebody said we can measure sea surface salinity this way. Wow, that's unbelievable. And then somebody told me we can measure carbon with satellites. It's just mind-blowing, the ability to do remote sensing. So I would say autonomy, remote sensing, and Don Walsh's dive would be the 3 I would name.
Looks like we have one more question asking, what do you think will be the next most impactful discovery or breakthrough made? Anything particularly promising?
Wow, that's a tough one. You're going to limit me to 1, huh? I think I'm gonna really geek out on you, okay? And I'm gonna tell you, there's so many ways to answer that. A broader engagement for co-development of products is one way to answer it, but I actually think it's based on the capability to observe the ocean and get data, because without that, we can't do all the things that we need to do, in my opinion. And I think the major breakthrough is tied to autonomy. And it's what I would call having resident capacity. And the idea there is that if we do this right, there will be no place in the ocean, including in the Arctic and in the Southern Ocean, where we won't be able to make high resolution observation on a moment's notice with fleets of highly interactive vehicles and sensors. So if, think about the Honga Tonga volcano and the tsunami that hit just a couple of months ago. We should be in a place where in the future, we would know immediately where it's happening, how big it is, and what the consequent tsunami might look like. So I think that's going to be the next big breakthrough.
Well, all I can say is you heard it here. You heard it here. Now, these are tough questions, Rick. But I will just echo the one comment that you made about satellites, because I really do think satellite oceanography really propelled physical oceanography, my background, and our ability to really model the ocean environment much more realistically, and then couple that to the atmospheric models and get us at answers and projections of the climate system that we just simply couldn't do before that. And so yeah. I would argue very, very powerful technologies that really help us get into this place where we're talking about climate solutions. And not still just trying to understand climate change.
If I can take 30 seconds, I love your point, Alan, and I'll point out that Admiral Jim Watkins was a submariner. And all submariners are interested in the ocean for obvious reasons. And the reason why he ended up becoming the president of CORE was because he had developed this extraordinary passion. And one of the events in his life that really triggered that passion was shortly after, when the space shuttle started launching back in the 80s. One of the first scientists to go on the shuttle was a Navy scientist named Paul Scully Power, who took photographs, form of remote sensing, of the North Atlantic. And those photographs, as I think everybody on this call knows, were full of Gulf Stream rings and eddies and really interesting patterns. And so Scully Power showed Admiral Watkins these pictures. And Watkins said, "What is that? Why do they form? What do they do to the acoustic signature in the ocean?" And nobody had a good answer back then. And he just became fascinated. And as they say, the rest is history. He became one of the most passionate advocates for ocean research we've seen in the last 50 years.
Well, that kind of bookends things, doesn't it? With Watkins on the front end and on the back end as well. Certainly a giant and a luminary in our community. Well, Rick, I want to thank you for your inspiring comments and your fun and your fun stories. Right? It's great to see that. Thank you for being here. I think it's time for us to move on to our next speaker, who's Armon Alex. Armon is a science communicator and ocean conservationist who serves as the City of Corpus Christi, Texas, vice chair of the Mayor's Environmental Task Force. He's also the executive director for the Gulf of Mexico Youth Climate Summit and is a board of directors member for EarthEcho International. Armon, are you ready to take it away?
Howdy, everyone, and good evening, afternoon, morning, depending on wherever you're tuning in from. Yeah, what a treat it is to be really speaking to such amazing stewards of our planets and friends. You all have really worked tirelessly to be here, and I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for your hard work and your dedication to making it this far. Now, I won't use this opportunity to talk again about the problems our world is facing currently. Quite frankly, if you're here today, you understand that our ocean planet is in a major climate crisis that affects just about every part of life. And maybe at this point, you're wondering who I am and why I'm addressing you all. Unfortunately, I haven't discovered some new animal, nothing crazy like that. But hopefully one day I can meet you all individually in person. I'm sure we will, and our future paths will cross. But for today, this virtual setting will suffice. I want to first mention that it's not every day that young people are invited or provided with the opportunity to deliver words. And I recognize the importance and the value of being able to share my voice at all today. My name is Armon Alex. And as you could assume from my greeting of howdy that yes, indeed, I am from Texas. I'm an undergraduate student at A&M Corpus Christi, pursuing a degree in science communications and public relations and environmental sciences. I'm the vice chair of my city's first ever environmental task force as the youngest delegate, the director of youth engagement at the Gulf Reach Institute, and a board member at EarthEcho International, which, by the way, is a nonprofit that was founded by Philippe Cousteau Jr. He's the grandson of the legendary underwater explorer Jacques Cousteau. And the main goal at EarthEcho is to provide my fellow young people, with the resources and opportunities to help save our ocean planet, period. Now, I'm not here to talk about me, but for context, my journey did start off probably much like yours. It is because of opportunities like the National Ocean Science Bowl and competitions like this one that our generation can be really exposed to the realities of our world and the struggles we face as a humanity. That our ocean planet needs to be respected and treated with importance in order for us to survive. That both you and I have this responsibility of fighting for the health and the longevity of not only our local environment, but the entire globe. And I really like to stress the influence that these kind of opportunities have, because as a young person myself, it has gotten me where I am today. Now, my story starts in Corpus Christi, Texas. Corpus is in South Texas, right off the coast, where the Corpus Christi Bay is in my backyard and the Gulf of Mexico is my neighbor. And this meant that for my entire life, practically, I've been directly connected to the ocean. And I like to tell the story that I'm about to tell of my first connections to the ocean. So when I was younger, the full extent of my appreciation for that big body of water was the beach. It's the beach where I played in and saw some really cool seashells I would find. And as a matter of fact, collecting seashells was probably the first way I developed a relationship with that water-based neighbor. I remember specifically my father and I would frequently visit our downtown area close to the bay to walk along the beach and collect only the seashells that we both liked. Now I say that what we both liked because the problem with that was that he specifically liked the small battered ones, thinking that they had a story to tell. And I, being so little, I quite frankly really liked the big shiny ones because they really looked brand new, almost like toys. And so when collecting shells, I remember countless times ignoring my personal love for these big and shiny shells just so that my dad would stay engaged and satisfied with this little game that we had so that we could stay at the beach longer. So I thought to myself, if I could find those big shiny shells that he likes, maybe not focus, or sorry, if I could find the battered ones that he likes, maybe not necessarily the ones that I like, we could stay at the beach longer. I would purposely hunt down those shells that weren't so interesting to me, but were rather preferred by my father, just so that he could let us stay longer by the bay. Now, before he passed away a few years ago, he asked if I still remembered when we would go out collecting shells, and I said, of course I did. That was like a core memory to me at the beach. He told me that he knew about me leaving behind those big and shiny shells that he could, so that he would be happy with playing. And so that was one thing he loved most about me, my compassion and my willingness to help others and make the most out of any opportunity. That I knew from a young age how to make the most out of any opportunity. Now, through my work these past few years in communicating through science, I have been fortunate enough to be involved with many organizations and groups that look to really help fix environmental problems like EarthEcho, the Schmidt Ocean Institute, No Ocean Exploration, and the President's Council on Environmental Quality. And I also had the opportunity to engage with some of the most inspiring young minds that simply want to protect and save our planet. As a young person myself, I also work with many adults in my day-to-day work. And it's from some adult testimonies that I have learned something very major. When it comes to tackling the destruction of our planet, it's the youth that are fearless, they're brave, they're innovative, and without a doubt, we are the most compassionate. Young people have the drive to invest in collaborative ideas, the creativity and the energy to help generate a positive change for our world. And when I say young people, I mean you, the individuals tuning in today, participating and competing from their homes, and the ones you'll see competing for gold, the ones still in school worrying about after-school projects and homework or learning the next TikTok dance. I'm talking about you. I think back to those moments on the beach with my father, and I realize now that those visits were a building block for the mindset that I have today. I learned lessons from being connected to our ocean, being kind to others, and making the most out of situations. Not just my situations, but also the relationships I have with other people or the relationships I have with organizations. And in doing so, I'm able to really fully experience all there is to be offered. I understand now that in order for me as a young environmentalist to learn and educate myself, I really have to treat every moment and every opportunity I have for a moment of growth and progress. Now, when I was 14, I was first exposed to EarthEcho International as a water challenge ambassador. I was able to go to our bays and our estuaries and our beaches to do something as a simple citizen science as testing water quality. This environmental nonprofit at the time was the catalyst, this spark that I really needed to inspire my passion for working with other young people to fight for our environment. You know, fast forward a year later, I designed a solution to an education problem our city had when it comes to water quality awareness. As a community, we simply lacked this knowledge needed to understand the importance of keeping our water healthy, not just for ourselves, but for the wildlife that depends on it. I had developed a first ever student-led initiative research team on water quality that would also go into classrooms in our community and educate young students about marine health and advocate at city council meetings for better water quality of our bays. We called it Project Waves. And Project Waves, or WAVES at least, was an acronym for Water Assessment for Vital Ecological Systems. And I really, really loved that title. We spent hours coming up for that project name. But anyways, after graduating high school, I went on to pursue a degree in speaking about something I care so much about, and that's our planet. I would become an ocean hero, all because I chose to make the most out of that initial opportunity that I was given. And for those of you in the audience, competitors, fans, and viewers, I want to ask you, a few questions. What are you going to take away from this event? How are you going to make the most out of this opportunity that you'll have exposure to? Because you will witness some amazing talent and information that you can use to grow as a young environmentalist. What you choose to do with the information that you learn from this event is completely up to you. Will you become the leaders of tomorrow, the leaders of today, frankly, the environmental leaders our world needs right now? Will you take this opportunity and make the most of it? Those are the questions I ask myself every day. They have helped formulate me into the person that I am right now. A young person with a massive passion to protect our planet. I strongly believe, young people like you and I will drastically change the future of our world. That may seem like a large weight on our shoulders, but truthfully, I truly see it as a moment of greatness and opportunity, especially when we're united together. The world of ocean science is vast and filled with plenty of opportunities. You've heard from Dr. Spinrad. There is no doubt in my mind that you can change the world, because it starts with invigorating change in our communities. We can do that when we use competitions like this as the catalyst for an even bigger story. You can grow yourself into being a powerful young environmentalist by making the most out of your opportunities. I want to leave you with this. This moment, your teams, our environmental movement cannot be achieved by disconnection between viewpoints. I challenge you to open your minds to other perspectives and other than your own. Strive to pursue the awareness of the dimensions within our own true ignorance, being able to understand that there are some things that you simply know nothing about that others experience, develops the understanding, the empathy, the compassion towards alternative perspectives. Within that notion, I believe that we can collaborate effectively and create authentic nature-based solutions. Lastly, I hope that you leave with the fuel to engage and lead this environmental movement in your communities, that you remember to invest your time, invest your energy into your passion to make a difference. Be inspired by what you see today and that you show compassion for others that can't do it themselves. And together, I believe that we can. Good luck to our wonderful contestants, and I wish you all the best. And thank you all for having me and letting me take some time to speak to you all.
Oh, Armon, I thank you. Thank you for the uplifting and the inspiring words and taking the time to join us here today. As with Dr. Spinrad, if anybody has any questions for Armon, please feel free to put them in the chat box and we'll relay those to him. I will say that one of the comments that you make resonates with me about the question about how we're going to demonstrate leadership. And I had a colleague many years ago who I would randomly see in the hall of the workplace, and he would stop me and he'd say, "Alan, what have you done to demonstrate leadership today?" And I think that's a critical question that we should be asking ourselves all the time. Well, what are we doing and how are we demonstrating our leadership and our support for and our love for the ocean? And in some cases, I think the biggest impediment is us just having the courage to go boldly in a direction that doesn't have a clear path. And it sounds like that's something that you have embraced within your life. And I really thank you for sharing that with us. So I'm not seeing any questions, but I'm happy to ask you a question. So was there ever one of those battered shells that you remembered more than any of the others?
Wow, okay. I don't think I've ever been asked a question about that story, but honestly, thank you for staying engaged and taking something from that story, because honestly, that is one of my favorite stories to tell, not only because it was about my father, but it was one of those, first early on memories I have, with our ocean. And the answer to your question is absolutely. So really quickly, I remember one of the times that we went out, there was this one specific shell like stuck along the seawall that we have in our downtown area. And it looked blue. And this was a little bit different to the shells that we were used to seeing in our area, especially downtown Corpus. And I remember my father pointing it out. His fingers were a lot larger than mine at that time. So I kid you not, I remember my father grabbing me by the waist and like holding me close to the edge of the seawall so I could reach with my tiny little fingers to grab it. I will always remember the amount of sacrifice that I went to collecting some of these shells. And I think that's probably why it just is instilled in my mind. That's one of the first early memories I have with our ocean. But it goes back to the dedication that I had to making sure that my father would stay engaged with our little activity just so that I could stay at the beach a little bit longer. Just I love the atmosphere there. And yes, we did get the shell, by the way.
It's an indelible image and a strong connection, clearly, that you have not just to the ocean environment, but a connection that you had with your family as well, which is equally powerful in the long run. Phenomenal story. Really appreciate you sharing it with us. I encourage anybody who's paying attention today to reach out, ask questions if you don't even have them today, but do feel free to reach out. I know Armon would be more than happy to answer any question you have. So Armon, thank you. At this point, I think it's time to get on to the reason we're here. No offense to our great speakers, who are both amazing, but really the reason we're here is because of our 2022 NOSB finals teams. Nearly 1,120 students across the country got to participate in the program they love and gain a greater understanding of our ocean, its importance to their daily lives, and the many career options they have as our future ocean leaders. We have 22 teams participating in this modified virtual version of our event. We'd like to thank you all for remaining flexible over the past year as your regional bowls determined how best to host their competitions, either virtually or for a few in person. It was a difficult undertaking, and sadly, 3 regional bowls were not held this year. But as always, a few other regional bowl coordinators stepped in and assisted teams from those regions that still wanted to compete, and we thank them for that. We also appreciate that our regional winning teams are participating in these virtual finals with events spread over a period of few weeks. We hope that you still find numerous opportunities for expanding your understanding of ocean science and the careers related to your field. So who are these amazing 2022 finals teams? Well, let me tell you. From the Bay Scallop Bowl, we've got Midwood High School. From the Blue Crab Bowl, Chesapeake Bay Governor's School for Marine and Environmental Science. From the Blue Heron Bowl, Enloe High School, and the Blue Lobster Bowl, Lexington High School.
Like not
Chesapeake... Yes, definitely. Jump on in and cheer for your team. From the Chesapeake Bay Bowl, we've got Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology. From the Dolphin Challenge, W.B. Ray High School. From the Garibaldi Bowl, Canyon Crest Academy. From the Great Lakes Bowl, Huron High School. From the Hurricane Bowl, Oxford High School. From the Lake Sturgeon Bowl, Ladue Horton Watkins High School. From the Los Angeles Surf Bowl, Santa Monica High School. From the Manatee Bowl, Miami Palmetto High School. From the Nor'easter Bowl, Phillips Exeter Academy. The Orca Bowl, the Tesla STEM High School. The Penguin Bowl, Centerville High School. The Quahog Bowl is Coggeshog High School. The Salmon Bowl, Lake Oswego High School. The Sea Lion Bowl, Doherty Valley High School. The Shore Bowl, Marine Academy of Science and Technology. The Southern Stingray Bowl, the Rockdale Magnet School for Science and Technology. The Spoonbill Bowl, the Academy of Environmental Science. And the Tsunami Bowl, Juneau Douglas High School. There are a lot of familiar names in this list, but there's also a lot of new names. There's even some past winners, and I suspect there's going to be some new winners coming through in some of these schools as well. With that introduction of our competing teams, the opening ceremony really does soon come to a close. But before closing, I'd like to add a special thank you to all the volunteers, some of whom are with us tonight, for assisting the Consortium for Ocean Leadership with the finals events. Whether held in person or virtually, we couldn't do it without your assistance. Your dedication to the program and our students is appreciated each and every year. But this year, even more so, as going virtual means multiple days of Zoom activity. But there's one advantage of going virtual as well. Volunteers from all over the country and even the world can participate in a finals competition and see our amazing teams in action. I'm happy to note that includes over 25 National Ocean Sciences Bowl alums. I'll end by saying that I'm sorry that we could not meet in person this year. I know I would have enjoyed watching you all compete with buzzers in hand. It's important that we, as members of the ocean science community, get back to in-person events, no matter your age.